All right, on this video, I'm going to go over two equations that have multiplication going on. On both of them, you'll notice there's a yellow line going straight down from the equal sign, and that's to signify the two sides of the equation. Remember, what you do on one side of the equation, you have to do on the other side. So the one on the left here, what you're doing is you look at the variable, the letter, and ask yourself what's keeping it from being by itself, because we want to know what does n equal. So I notice that n is being smushed up against a 7. That means that it's being multiplied by 7. And also there's a -4. When you have these equations and there's two things going on, you want to undo what's added or subtracted to that variable first. So I'm going to move that -4. So you focus in on what you want to move, and you say, well, how do I undo subtracting 4? Well, you do the opposite of subtracting, which is to add. So I'm going to add 4, and I need to do that on both sides of the equal sign. Because -4 plus 4 is 0. That canceled it out. So I'm left with a 7n still. And then 31 plus 4 is 35. Now n is almost by itself, but it's still being multiplied by 7. It's smushed up against that 7. So you need to say, okay, now let's move that multiplying by 7. What's the opposite of multiplying? To divide. So I'm going to divide by 7 here and divide by 7 here. Because 7 divided by 7 is 1, so I'm just left with 1n, which is just n, and 35 divided by 7 is 5. And that's it. For the one on the right, I wanted to show you this because on your homework, there's going to be some that have parentheses. Remember, when you have parentheses for an equation, you need to first get rid of those parentheses before you start moving anything around. So I'm going to take that number outside of the parentheses and multiply it by each number inside of the parentheses. It's called distribution. So 2 times t is 2t, and 2 times +1 is +2. Now this looks a lot like the equation on the left. We can start moving things around. We want t by itself, but it's being smushed up against the 2, and then we're adding 2. Remember, you undo what's added or subtracted first. So if we think of how do we undo adding 2, what's the opposite of adding 2? Subtracting 2. So you need to do that on both sides of the equal sign, because 2 minus 2 cancels, and you're left with a 2t. And on the right side, you have 10 minus 2, which is 8. Now the variable's almost by itself, but there's still that 2 smushed up against it. So ask yourself, how do we undo multiplying by 2? We do the opposite, which is to divide by 2. Because 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're just left with 1t, and 8 divided by 2 is 4.